You are now listening to the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release. Today we are talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, 1985. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And joining us once again, super special guests, the Mixed Reviews. It is Gavin and Louie returning again. I wonder if this movie is better than Urbania, but who's to say? How are you folks?
First of all, we're great, but then it's like the complete like flashback to Urbania and what's the other one? All Over the Guy, yep. I believe.
Yeah.
We talked about. Man, you guys only bring us on for bangers, and I appreciate that. This episode.
They're like, oh, has this got some gay stuff in it? Bring out the queers.
You chose it. You chose it. Bullshit.
Oh, that's right. I did. I did.
Yeah. You chose Urbania and All Over the Guy too. I gave you the whole list, and you chose that.
There was some negotiation for that. Okay.
Kevin never beating the homophobic allegations.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen,
no, we love you, Kevin. Thank you for inviting us back.
Listen, y'all had your chance back in 2009 to get me on your team when I was just listening to the Fame and the Fame Monster over and over. But look at me now. Fight Club in my top 10. You lose. All right.
You know, Louie and I were both.
You looped back.
Yeah.
You looped back to Limp Bizkit. And it's just we had the moment and we lost it. But
Louie and I were both in that draft, by the way, and I'm so sorry that you didn't get picked.
Yeah.
Also, you're telling me that Fight Club wasn't in your top 10 in 2009?
It totally was.
Yeah, I find that very hard to believe if it wasn't.
It just moved up a little bit more. Yeah. Once Born This Way came out, I was just like, nope, straight all the way.
Born Like This, you really are straight, buddy.
That album's not good. It's not good. I don't know.
Kevin, I'm going to have to, if you continue to slander Gaga and her work, I will have to leave this meeting.
I cannot slander the Fame and the Fame Monster. Both are just fantastic albums, but she lost me at some point.
Don't do it, bitch.
I was going to say how you feel about Joanne. No, don't do it.
I will also say I hated the first Joker movie so goddamn much, and I was like, yeah, if they make a sequel, no way. And then Gaga's in it, and I'm like, fuck. Like,
that trailer, I've seen that trailer twice in one day doing a double feature, and I was like, can we bring back the Speak No Evil trailer? Actually, I long for that.
Yeah, Kevin, this past week I was thinking like, all right, Kevin, your instructions for the movies that this week should have been to 1, Speak No Evil, and 2, Never Let Go. You gotta, those are the mainstream horror movies you gotta keep up with.
Never Let Go looks so fucking boring. Like,
literally the only person I see advertising Never Let Go is Halle Berry herself. She is a one-woman marketing team. Other than that, no idea.
Yeah.
And the fact that it just looks like Bird Box, but probably not as frantic and still boring though.
I will admit I saw Speak No Evil over the weekend and completely forgot Never Let Go also came out and was playing next door, and I was like, oh shit, did I make a mistake? And then I walked out of Speak No Evil and was totally shrugging, but I was also like, I bet that it's kind of the same experience. I don't know.
I forgot that the Brandy A24 horror movie already came out.
Yeah. They played it at the Coolidge for like a week.
Which looks fucking awful. Do I have it downloaded because I have to watch it? Yes, but...
When was the last big movie... What was the last big movie Brandy was in? Was it... the only thing I can think of is like Temptation Confessions of a Marriage Counselor, the grotesque Tyler Perry movie that came out like, I don't know, 11 years ago.
That could describe any Tyler Perry movie. What do you say?
Yeah, I know, but this one's, I mean, you know what, I can't talk because that's the only one I've seen all the way through, but it's especially egregious. Just the
Was
way
it
that
the one with the
ends.
bad wigs or the ones with the worst wigs?
There are bad wigs. I'd say there are probably worse wigs than other Tyler Perry movies because no one's in drag in this one, but it ends like in such a mean-spirited, hateful way that like if I told you right now, you'd probably be like, excuse me?
I feel like Louie and I have probably had to watch it for some reason for the mixed reviews. I feel like it's probably hits, like there's probably been some minor celebrity in it that we've covered or something.
I'm not seeing it on Letterboxd, so you still have a chance. You could yeah.
Something to look forward to. I guess I'll hold off killing myself another day.
Man, when I come on for the mixed reviews of Brandy, it's going to be kicking ass.
Can't wait to talk about Osmosis Jones.
Oh my god, I forgot about Osmosis Jones. I saw that in theaters as a child.
That joke, that's leaving me up to, have you ever had somebody on for the mixed reviews that only had B-sides? How about that?
I'm also remembering, I think it was Blank Check, where they were talking about Osmosis Jones, where they were like, remember how the inciting incident of that movie is Bill Murray eats a half-eaten egg after it's been in a chimp's mouth, and one of the co-hosts goes, why? And there's a pause, and then they just go, because he sucks.
I'm sorry, we don't talk about Blank Check because we are already filling a space of two annoying people hosting a movie podcast. So
I mean, there's three of us, so now we're all together.
What are we talking about today? The Front Room? Is that what we're talking about? From Brandy herself? It's pretty funny that A24 was just like, oh yeah, Neon's been killing it, movie's been killing it. You know what horror movie we got? That's right, starring Brandy. Today we are talking about, once again, the Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge in 1985. This opened in 522 theaters in the U.S. on November 1st, 1985. Before I go for the rest of it, gentlemen, what have y'all been talking about on the mixed reviews? I know you did the Kirsten Dunst Redux. What else have you been up to?
Post Kirsten Dunst, we did do a Kristen Stewart episode just because we really wanted to fuck up saying her name a bunch of times following it after doing Kirsten Dunst. And that was with our good friend Doug, who is part of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective, which we are also a member of. And then this past, last night, literally, we just recorded our Winona Ryder episode, which is our September episode. And actually, I literally just finished it. It's currently on my other computer right now encoding as we speak. So that episode should hopefully be up by the time this episode goes out. So yeah, check out our Winona Ryder episode as well.
Hell yeah. Can't wait.
Did you guys talk about the 10?
Winona Ryder is like extremely your shit. Like you guys are just like,
yeah.
feels right.
Did you guys talk about the 10?
No, I don't think. The 10. No.
I was gonna say Louis did mention it. She's not in it enough to really warrant. I say that even though we did talk about Night on Earth. So whatever. I'm a liar. Who cares?
What about that Bret Easton Ellis movie that nobody saw?
That
Which
could be
one?
any Bret Easton Ellis? Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, you're right. Not the Canyons. The one before that. I don't know.
God, the Canyons. I watched that.
I did too.
So is Louis and I. We did a Lindsay Lohan episode.
Yeah, she's great in it. I love Paul Schrader's films most of the time. That screenplay, yikes.
Yikes.
Yeah.
And her co-star, double yikes.
Oh, double yikes. Yeah, I completely forgot about Yeah.
Budget was $3 million. I don't have transitions. Opening weekend, this made $2.8 million, and domestic and overall gross of $21.1 million. But I also sold $29 million, so who knows? This opened number 4 the weekend of release. Top 5 films that weekend. Death Wish 3, just bring me back where that could be the number 1 movie of the weekend. To Live and Die in L.A., Jagged Edge, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and Back to the Future.
Have you seen To Live and Die in L.A. yet, Kevin? It's
hell yeah,
so good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Your taste is in your ass. Hell yeah.
That might be my favorite Friedkin. It's up there.
I will not spoil it for Louis because I have really strong feelings that Louis has not seen it. But I got to see it a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, a decade ago probably, with my friend Karen on the big screen. And I had not seen it. I knew nothing about it. And when that thing that happens right before the last 10 minutes of the movie, I was just like, jaw on the floor, staring at Karen, staring at the screen, back at Karen. Like, I've never seen that happen in a movie before. And to this day, still not. And I wish more movies were as ballsy as To Live and Die in LA.
It's also crazy, too, when you read, and even there's footage out there of the alternate ending that they shot. And you're like, this would have sucked so bad if they had chosen that.
I literally only heard about the alternate ending this year. I was talking with a friend about it, and I basically told the same story, and they're like, you should see the alternate ending. And I was like, what the fuck?
I didn't even know there was an alternate ending until now.
Yeah.
Can't imagine that movie without one, or with one.
Yeah, it's wild. Louis, it's a good movie. You should check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The alternate ending is it all takes place in Alabama.
To live and die in Alabama.
Reese Witherspoon pops up at the end. And you're like, holy shit, it's connected. Yeah.
God.
Number one song in the U.S. this week is the same as in the U.S. and Canada. Is "Part-Time Lover" by Stevie Wonder. Maybe it was "Buddies" that we covered that was about the same instance, because the next week the number one song in the U.S. was just the Miami Vice theme song.
Yeah,
Better Times.
I think that was Buddies, because we just covered that, and that was also 85, so...
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Plot description from Google. Jesse Walsh, played by Mark Patton, moves with his family into the home of the lone survivor from a series of attacks by dream-stalking monster Freddy Krueger, played by Robert Englund. There, Jesse is bedeviled by nightmares and inexplicable violent impulses. It turns out Freddy needs a host body to carry out his gruesome vendetta against the youth of Springwood, Ohio. Why? I still don't know. While Freddy gains influence, Jesse and his girlfriend, debatable Lisa, played by Kim Myers, race against the clock trying to figure out what's going on. That's a good way to say it.
You know what's going on? Homosexuality.
That's right. Written by David Chaskin. This is his first produced script. After this, The Curse in 1987 and I, Madman in 1989. Directed by Jack Sholter, Almost Major's favorite director. Prior to this, Alone in the Dark in 1982. Listen to our episode. After this, The Hidden in 1987. Listen to our episode. Renegades in 1989. Wishmaster 2. Evil Never Dies in 1999. That's right. And an uncredited director in that shit show of a fuckhouse named Supernova from 2000. Y'all seen Supernova? That movie's dumb.
Yes, we've done both James Spader and
Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett episodes, so we've seen it at least twice.
Wow.
Wow. I'm just like now. We cover so many movies, and like I just googled Supernova and I was like, oh yes,
Yeah,
this
it's
is
the
the
movie
one
with
where they're like, aren't they like fucking like but floating?
Yes, but it's digital blackface because
Right.
because
What?
it's actually it's actually Lou Diamond Phillips and Robin Tunney having sex while floating, and they went back in to make it James Spader and Angela Bassett because it's like far enough away, so they darkened Robin Tunney's skin using computers. Yeah.
Who were
Not
all
good.
the...
Not a good look.
No, terrible movie. Who also directed this? Walter Hill
Walter
and
Hill.
Francis Ford Coppola. Yeah.
I was gonna say Francis Ford Coppola famously was the last one to come in.
God.
Anyone see Megalopolis last night?
No.
I skipped it because it sounded like work.
And I'm like seeing people say it's Coppola's Southland Tales, and I'm like, that's not helping. And I'm like,
no,
if it was
no.
Coppola's The Box, I'd be into it. But like, yeah.
Every 5 fucking years, somebody's like, Southland Tales, is it a secret masterpiece? And
No.
the answer is always no. It's not.
It's
God damn
bad.
it.
I got stoned and made out with a guy halfway through Southland Tales, so I really don't have any legs to stand on in terms of my opinion.
You can
But
just
I
say
will
my
say-
name, Charlie. And it also didn't make the movie any better, no offense.
I will say we did stop as soon as I heard I got soul, but I'm not, and I was like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Yeah.
Every year somebody on Twitter is just like, man, what a fantastic scene. I was like, this scene's dumb. This scene sucks.
It's like badly framed, and the choreography isn't even that good. I'm gonna get in trouble.
I say this all the time. It's like very hard to do satire and parody in the moment, and that movie is about the moment. It's like a couple years removed, but it's like all about post 9/11 anxiety and everything. And honestly, it feels like it misses every mark, and I fucking do it to myself because I read every reappraisal every year that somebody's like, no, it's about post 9/11, and I'm just like, no, it doesn't work, guys. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Best movie about 9/11, still Cloverfield, folks. Or World Trade Center. Charlie just watched that and loved that, didn't you?
I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, okay.
Oliver Stone and I don't often get along, and that I think might be the worst thing he's ever made that I have seen. Jesus Christ.
That comes from when you were making out with him during Southland Tales.
Well, like my roommate came in. I will just say this. I know I said I didn't want to talk about it, but there's one thing I will say. My roommate came in and he'd seen the movie before and went, "Are they in a hospital?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they were like, "How long ago did 9/11 happen?" I'm like, "The day before." And he's like, and there are empty chairs behind them. And like, yeah, that's a very good point. Like, even like the background, it doesn't even feel like an Oliver Stone movie. Anyway, we don't need to get into that.
To bring up the Simpsons meme, where it's just like, this is the worst Oliver Stone movie I've seen. The worst Oliver Stone movie you've seen so far.
Yeah.
You haven't seen W yet, sir. Give it time.
No, there's no way it could be as boring as World Trade Center, but
You'd be
anyway.
surprised. Starring Mark Patton as Jesse Walsh. Prior to this, come back to the Five and Dime Jimmy D and Jimmy Dean in 1982. After this, took a 27-year hiatus from acting after some TV appearances and a small role in a movie called Misplaced in 1989. More on him and his journey later. He recently showed up in the movie Swallowed in 2022. Kim Myers as Lisa Weber, also starring Robert Rusler, Clu Gallagher. This is, wow, punch me in the face. Gallagher. And of course, Robert Englund. Does this New Line Cinema film have Lynn Shay? No, but her brother and head of New Line Cinema, Robert Shay, has an uncredited role as the S&M bartender. So we got the family in here.
Can I just make a side note that it is such a bummer when Mark Patton shows up in Swallowed in the second half and you're like, oh shit, Mark Patton's here. And then the whole movie goes to shit. Just want to throw that out there. Real bummer. But anyway.
He's having fun, though. But yeah.
He's having fun, but the whole movie just sucks after that point.
The first half of it, oh man. I was like, this shit is fucking awesome. And then I was like, well, what a strange movie. But didn't that director also do Kyle Gallagher movie? What was it called?
The Passenger?
Kyle Gallner, yes. And also did The Ruins with Jenna Malone and Jonathan Tucker.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
I saw
yes.
that in theaters.
Yeah.
That's the one where
Plants
the vines get inside of you,
Yeah,
right?
there's a really nasty
Yeah.
decapitation scene where they have to chop up a guy's legs with rocks or something. Ooh.
Trivia. Boy, howdy, I got a lot, but I'll try to make it as fast as possible. New Line Cinema originally didn't ask Robert Englund to return as Freddy Krueger and refused to give him a pay raise. A stuntman was cast as Freddy, and after 2 weeks of filming, Robert Shay realized this was a terrible lapse in judgment, fired the stuntman, hired Englund, and met his demands. I believe I saw something else that they were just like, why don't we just get a guy and put a mask on him? Who cares?
I have watched the special features to this movie years. One of my very first DVD sets ever was the Nightmare on Elm Street collection. I've never heard that before. That's deranged.
Yeah.
That's so wild. I feel like that is such a miscalculation that they've buried that until this moment. So congratulations on opening the arc, Kevin, because that's insane. Why would you
really
ever
bad.
do, like, Freddy is so much Robert Englund.
Does Robert Englund even know about this?
Yeah, exactly. I've read his autobiography. I don't think he does. Which, by the way, if you've not read Robert Englund's Man of Your Dreams autobiography, so good.
Fantastic title.
He just seems like a nice dude.
Mm-hmm. Seemed like a nice dude from the documentaries I watched about this movie, too.
Yeah.
So.
In the opening sequence, the bus driver is Robert Englund without the Freddy makeup. This is the only Nightmare film in which the lead character is male. Kim Myers was allegedly cast in the film due to her resemblance as Meryl Streep, and let me tell you, yeah, she really fucking does. Is she that good in the movie? Not really, but you know,
She's trying.
Yeah, I don't think she's horrible. I mean, we can
horrible.
attack the movie for other reasons.
No, not horrible, but you know. In an interview featuring in Search of Darkness Part 2, Robert Englund states that he was fully aware of the homoerotic elements of the film and was enthusiastic about playing up these undertones in the on-screen interactions between Freddy and Jason. Mark Patton says in Never Sleep Again documentary that he had to say no to some pieces of business, such as Freddy putting his blades in Jesse's mouth, that would have made him feel uncomfortable. That would have happened. There's no denying that shit.
He talks about that in the documentary.
Scream Queen.
Yeah, it's Scream Queen. The makeup artist like ran over and was like, I need to do his makeup, and was like, don't put that blade in your mouth. It will look like you're blowing him.
I would have been like, and yeah.
Yeah.
Robert Englund has stated that this is his least favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Sir, I would like to point you to Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and Nightmare on Elm Street 6. But yeah,
When would he make that statement, though?
I have no idea. I
would not be surprised if he's changed his mind, considering.
I would love if he was like, my least favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie is the remake.
I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ.
That movie sucks.
It's pretty bad. Had this film failed, New Line Cinema might have not survived. The movie hit big enough to finally give the studio some cash flow, and in the following years, New Line Cinema rode the Elm Street train to further success. Had a hit with another horror series, Critters, in 1986, which I think we mentioned in our Critters episode, that somehow Critters kept New Line Cinema afloat. You know, bless those little fluffy guys. Cranked out John Waters movies and turned into a respectable and profitable mini-major during the 90s. However, all of that was uncertain back when the film was being made. Studio head Robert Shea micromanaged every aspect of the production, regularly confusing crew members by stepping over the line and offering orders which should have come from the director. That led to an understandably uneasy relationship between Shea and Jack Shoulder. On top of this, the production was remarkably rushed, slotted for a November 1st, 1985 release date when the first one had only been released November 9th the previous year. As a result, tensions were high, the hours were long, and the work was hard. There was no real time to stop and second-guess the direction. Jack Shoulder couldn't direct the pool house love scene without cracking up or laughing, so he gave it to an assistant to direct instead. Jack Shoulder also initially wanted to turn down the directing job as he had, quote, no interest in making horror films, but took the jab after realizing this could put him on the map. Editor's note, and he eventually gave us The Hidden because of that, so thank him for that. Mark Patton, an openly gay actor, stated that he sees himself as the first male scream queen due to a combination of factors, including the film's homoerotic subtext, the fact that he is often described or depicted on screen screaming, quote, like a girl, and because he viewed the character as a closeted gay man. Heather Langenkamp said she was never actually offered a role in the movie. I would say that that's strange to not follow her into the sequel, but I guess the Friday the 13th series didn't really do that with Final Girls either. She does return in the third one, which we'll be covering next, and New Nightmare. Both movies fucking rip.
I want to raise my hand on the Heather Langenkamp. There's a reason Heather Langenkamp didn't return for the second one and why she wasn't asked, and that has to do with Wes Craven's involvement. Even though Wes Craven did turn down making the film because he had issues with the script, including the exploding parrot and the idea that Freddy Krueger, who's all of 5'6", would be in front of a bunch of teens at a pool party. He said that part of his deal was do not touch anything from the first movie because that is a self-contained story. Because originally this movie was supposed to start with the car from the end of Nightmare on Elm Street 1, which is how Nightmare on Elm Street 1 ends, which is why they start it with the school bus instead. The big, I guess, concession was we need a driving scene, so we'll go with a school bus. I don't know why. It's a deranged thing, but that was part of Wes Craven's stipulation. So honestly, I can fully understand why Heather Langenkamp was not involved, because most likely Wes Craven was like, don't contact her.
Yeah, we had to mention it when we covered Nightmare on Elm Street, but the fact that there was 6 different versions of the ending, where it was just a little bit happier, a little bit not happier, fully for a sequel and all that stuff, so that was all a big thing. This is the only film in the series not to use Charles Bernstein's original theme or variation of it. According to a Fangoria magazine in 1989, it was revealed that the screenwriter Leslie Boehm, who went on to write Dante's Peak, Daylight, and The Alamo. Y'all remember The Alamo? Thank you.
I have trouble.
Okay. He wrote an early script titled Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Baby. I don't want to watch that. My concept, quote, my concept was a homage to Rosemary's Baby. I came up with a plot that had a new family move into the house, a teenage boy, his pregnant mother, and a stepfather the boy didn't get along with. It was a real bloody, scary idea, much more physical and realistic because of the dream reality stuff. The story was more of a possession scenario with Freddy getting inside the mother's womb, controlling the fetus. Now I want to see that. But New Line passed on it because the executor, Sarah Reiser, was pregnant at the time, and I understand the idea upset her, so they went with David Chaskin's concept instead. Bowen would later write Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child in 1989.
I was just going to say, when are you covering part 5? Because that's all part 5. That's essentially just The Dream Child.
Yeah, this man for 5 years was like, I'm gonna have Freddy interact with a fucking infant, okay? This is my dream job. 2 quick things here. Wes Craven, director of the original, well, Louis pretty much already talked about this, but he did return to the series to write the 3rd installment and direct New Nightmare, which both rip. Mark Patton would go on to discuss his experiences and aftermath with this movie in the 2019 documentary Scream Queen, which we will probably be talking about right now. Did everybody watch or rewatch the documentary?
I watched it for the first time today. Yeah, it's
yeah.
really, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yes.
Mark Patton, I think, is understandably very affected by everything that happened to him. When the movie was happening, after the movie, and he, for a lot of the movies on this. First of all, I think the documentary itself is not super well made. It's a little bit hokey pokey, but but clearly, like, they got access to like all these actors and people. Mark Patton clearly has like this. I mean, is vendetta too strong? I don't know. He's got a chip on his shoulder for sure. But also by the end of it, he's just very much like, wow, I got what I wanted. I was like, no, girl, you did not. That fucking guy is an asshole.
I know.
you.
I thought the exact same thing. I watched it for the first time last night, and I was just like, my heart was breaking during that scene. And then he was like, I got what I wanted. I was like, did you? Like, did you really?
So he confronts David Chaskin, who's the writer, and like, so for some context. So David Chaskin for a long time was like, what? It's not gay at all. You guys are crazy.
In fact, he like not only did he like bend over backwards to be like it's not gay at all, he's like it's homophobic. It should be shown at conversion therapy camps.
He was like,
And
well,
also-
that's a joke. And I was just like, hilarious.
I mean, he does,
Hilarious.
he does like not to, but I mean, this guy is a total asshole. So not to be like too much reading, but I was just looking at him like, oh, you're not a guy who can read the room. So you think this shit is funny.
He also basically blamed all of the gayness on Mark and said like, oh, well, he was too faggy and like that's what he turned the movie gay. And so, of course, Mark, who at the time his like lover was like cat AIDS, he's now like a lives with AIDS, never worked again, just like people shit all over him. And he's like, and now though, because the movie's gotten this reappraisal and people are like, oh, it's this cult classic, it's so good. Now fucking David Chaskin's like, yeah, like, isn't it so cool and so great that I wrote this like amazing movie with all this amazing subtext? And it's like, oh, when it's like, fine, now you're coming out for all the credit. But at the time, like, this guy was like left in the dust. And his apology was like, I'm sorry if you felt like I said something that like,
I
offended
noticed
you.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will fucking kill you.
Mark Patton's lover was already like HIV positive and like sick. Like, it's crazy. It's insane.
And then
like,
also the scene with like the director
That's
who's
what,
like,
can I take over for the director? Because I have hated the director since I was a teen. Jack Shoulder is an awful director on top of being a terrible person.
He
And
is no
has been
longer
this way.
Almost Major's favorite director. I'm very sorry I said that.
Is he? Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's
Leave
just that
meeting.
we've covered him like 3-4 times now.
I do love The Hidden, but even when I did research for The
too.
Hidden, like it sounds like he like did not like have like the most progressive ideas. Like he was talking about how like he was like talking to friends who would be like saying, "Oh, I had a rectal exam and like I got aroused. Oh my gosh, I'm like that's terrifying." And it's like, okay, great. Like it's not exactly like.
I know that was made before this. That was his first movie. Did he learn how to frame a shot before, and did he just forget when he made Nightmare on Elm Street 2?
Oh, The Hidden was after Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Oh,
Alone in the Dark we covered, that was before it, which also made me really confused as to why he said he wasn't interested in horror movies, because he made a horror movie 3 years ago, but it actually, it bummed me out to see what an asshole he was in the documentary, considering how much we were how enthusiastic we were about The Hidden, but I also like that Robert Ressler immediately was like, Jack, shut up, don't stop pretending. Like come on, man. Like,
to steal a well-worn line from Louis, the reason is because he's a liar, Dina. Because he like ever since I had saw those special features for Nightmare on Elm Street 2 all the way back in the early DVD box set, he has always been like, no, I didn't know it was a gay movie. I didn't know. You would have to be dumb as fucking dog shit not to recognize it's deranged to continue this lie and to like push the narrative forward. What does he have to lose at this point? He doesn't even direct films anymore. It just makes him seem like the dumbest human alive. So then when he goes to Mark and Scream Queen and he tells him like, listen, you can't blame everybody for the bad stuff that happened to you. You got to take responsibility. This man doesn't fucking know what it's like to be a gay man with AIDS in the 80s and trying to make a career in a literal career that will not let you be who you are.
yeah,
Like so like, fuck you, dude. Go make another bad movie and shut your fucking face. Nobody needs another direct-to-video Wishmaster movie. So like, I hate Jack Shoulder so much. And so, yes, I agree. The stuff with the screenwriter with Chaskin, like, is heartbreaking and awful too, but I really wish he also went after Jack Shoulder, because that man has rubbed me the wrong way since I was like 16 years old.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think about how, and I just rewatched Showgirls for the millionth time, how like at least Paul Verhoeven was like, I directed Elizabeth Berkley to, act this way. Like he never threw her under the bus and was always like, no, that she was following my lead. Like, and
he takes no responsibility for the film that he fucking directed. And it's literally at this point, he should just not show up to these things then, because he truly believes this movie was directed by no one.
You're totally right that like how like he would have to be dumb not to see it, because I was watching, I'm thinking like, oh, is it like all just like visual, like is that like how they're conveying the idea, which like if it was all visual, like that'd still be no excuse for missing it and everything. But like there's even the line where Robert Ressler says like, you like instead of sleeping with your girlfriend, you want to come here and sleep with me. I'm like, okay, that's like right there. It's like literally in the script. How are you missing this or claiming to miss it? What's the scene? It's like a 5-second scene where they're jogging around the track and they say something to each other, and then it's just like, hey, you watch your mouth or something, and it's like, do you remember,
I'm forgetting what it is.
Patton says to Rustler, do you remember your dreams? And Rustler's like, only the wet ones. And then Marshall Bell's like saying, hey, watch, no talking,
Yeah, like even stuff like that, it's like you put like, Jesus, come on. Like
I'll say with the doc, it's it's like it's fine to good. I'm more so giving it leverage because I'm just like, I'm glad that Mark Patton is able to find some sort of peace. It also just makes me sad that he's been holding on for this for so long, and that talking with the writer, even if it did like give him some peace, it's just like it really shouldn't have. It's obviously his fault and other people's fault, and I don't agree that Jack Shoulder is just like, no, it's your fault, obviously, but it's just like I wish that it didn't have to get to that point for him to feel like, oh, actually, which is great. The whole point of him starting to go to horror conventions and whatnot and be recognized, that's a huge part of why I like it as well. But yeah, it's a fine to good documentary, but it's very much also it's awesome to see him be appreciated for sure.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say Mark Patton was at the FlameCon Louis and I went to 2019, I want to say, and I'm one of those people that got that picture with him where he has the like, it's not a good picture of me. He looks great though, so that's good. But very nice guy, like super nice. But it is one of those things where like he's just like sitting at a table waiting for people to approach him and whatnot. And I don't know, like obviously that wouldn't be the case if he didn't have to if this film didn't loom over him in such a way that he felt he needed to like give up his career. So that bums me out, but it I don't know. He's super nice and very affable and just a nice person to talk to. So if you ever do see him at a convention, go up to him, talk to him. He's great. Also, just because it's a very small gay world, about 5 minutes into the movie, I recognize somebody I know, like at the guy that's like the final girl when they're interviewing the people at first. I'm like, oh, that's Mike. I know Mike.
That's awesome.
I think the movie is most like it is best just as a, like you said, Kevin, like it gave him a spot to find some peace. I think the ending is pretty like, well done, where he's like, you know what, I do have to let this go. And he talks about how God made him famous, took it away, but gave him privacy to like deal with this illness, made him famous again, because now he's going on and meeting people and fans, and now he's being able to educate people about living with AIDS. So like there is peace in that. There's certainly some like these straights who want to play fucking dumb. It gets us how does such like a radical film like just magically fall together to like make this queer cult classic that no one wants to take responsibility for? It's weird because even Mark is like, I wasn't doing shit. I was just kind of doing the thing. Like I was doing, so like no one in the production, nobody is saying like, absolutely, like the one person who is like the most like aggressively into the gayness is fucking Robert Englund and like Rob Rustler, who are like, yeah. And who are the bad guys?
And that's why I think
the Robs.
I first of all love their band. They're great.
The Robs.
But I think that's exactly why Charlie said, like, when did Robert Englund say that about this being his least favorite? Because I'm sure he's like reappraised that, because he genuinely seems kind of like, oh, actually there is this major transgressive element of it, and that makes it so much more interesting than some of the sequels that we got. So you're right, like it is one of those things where like Robert Englund comes out looking the best. I don't want to spend all of our time talking about the documentary because
No,
we're
no,
going
no.
to actually talk about the movie. But yeah, it is such an interesting companion piece. But you're both right. My least favorite thing about the documentary is the narration. I know that's like some famous podcast guy that narrated it, but he literally sounds like the host of A Haunting. He's like, and then they sat down to talk about their feelings. It's like, what is happening?
It kind of sounds like, the narrator of Judge Judy a little bit.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Mark Patton, who was in Freddy.
Yeah. They didn't pay them back because they said it was a gift. That's always my favorite Judge Judy excuse.
And that gift was homosexuality.
Yeah, I definitely just wanted to talk about the doc because it's, there's the Never Sleep Again doc, which is like 47 hours long, but it's I don't think we've covered a movie that just has a full documentary that was released by itself, not a special feature.
Well, I don't know.
But-
I'll have to do some research on the Red Dawn remake when we do that. No, I'm kidding.
Why?
Wow, the groans. I know it wasn't good, but wow.
I never saw it, or
I
haven't yet.
I haven't seen Red Dawn either. Not exactly my
I
film.
think Louis and I both have because we did a Chris Hemsworth episode. It's
I saw it.
one of our most popular episodes ever. Ask Louis and I off the recording how much we like it.
Okay.
I can't believe I forgot that Chris Hemsworth was in that movie, but remembered Josh Hutcherson is.
Hutcherson and Peck. Yeah, the two Joshes.
Oh my god.
You have a thing for large heads. That's it.
The fact that we're going to be covering the remake of Red Dawn and the remake of Old Boy.
Well, at least the Old Boy remake, I say this without having said it, is made by an auteur and at least seems interesting. Question
The
mark?
disrespect to, let me check my notes, Dan Bradley, who did Red Dawn?
They told her it was just a bad dream. She knew it was real. It became a nightmare on Elm Street. Now there's a new kid on Elm Street. And Freddy's been waiting.
I'm afraid to go to sleep.
And we'll stay up all night if we have to. I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
Freddy's back. And this time he's not fooling around. You are all my children now. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. It's coming soon. Watch out for it.
Let's get into initial thoughts. I'll go through mine real quick. I think this movie is fine overall. I think it's definitely a movie that's more fun to talk about than watch for the most part because there's just, it has the unfortunate blessing of being one of the first gay horror films, which means it gets drugged under the bus. If it would have came out today, it would have been a lot more celebrated and, I will say that 5 minutes in, Jesse's ass is exposed by the guy that just dove into his crotch while playing baseball, and they start to wrestle on the ground. The coach breaks it up, and he tells them to assume the position. This movie is straight, okay?
That's actually how we used to meet before Grindr. So
Freddy's appearances early on are really strange. They treat him less like a bad guy and more like, well, this guy. Yeah, he's here. He's not as scary, but this is the last time that he's actually just scary. He becomes much more goofy in the sequels until New Nightmare, which is fucking awesome, man. Jesse's buddy totally has a crush on him. Gavin mentioned it in a previous episode, but the shot of the basketball flying off the wall and then the next shot, it's a volleyball that hits the coach.
it is my favorite continuity error ever, the basketball gambit.
Not sure. I mentioned this when we were talking about the plot, but I'm not sure why Freddy needs Jesse and who exactly Freddy is getting his quote unquote revenge on. I'm not sure. Very low kills or scares in this movie. It takes about 40 minutes for the gym teacher to die. But I will say that Jesse turning into Freddy with his arm slowly shredding away and Freddy's eye coming from his throat and Freddy bursting through his body is just top tier shit. Just so awesome. And the whole entire pool scene, it's pretty fucking awesome. Louis, as the known non-spooky bitch, I need to know your thoughts on this.
Well, I very famously chose this. Me and Gavin did a slasher film episode of the Mixed Reviews, and I chose this as my 5-star review. Number one, because of all the gay shit, but number two, like you kind of said it, like there's not a lot of scares here. Like Eddie, not Eddie, LOL Eddie, Freddy
That's
is
his brother.
Yeah, right. Freddy is just kind of like goofy, like and especially like the pool scene. It's kind of like, fuck this straight shit, just fuck all this straight shit. Like, you guys suck. High school stupid.
Once again, not to interrupt you, I'm so sorry, Lou, but you're right. Like, my favorite, and I don't know why I've never noticed it before, when he goes to attack Lisa and he like walks in the room and he just like knocks a plate off the shelf. Just like, that's his big threatening move. Like, he's just like, fuck this decorative plate.
Yeah. No, I was just very, I mean, this is not my wheelhouse at all. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, there's actually, it's just so obvious. Like, this manifestation of the horror of within, right? Like, there's the point when Jesse's like, I don't want to be this way. I there's something inside of me. Like, it's just, every queer person should watch this. You know, I mean, I think I told the story on our episode, but like, I fully had a moment like in high school where I was with my girlfriend and we were making out on a couch and I started literally bleeding from my nose. Like, my homosexuality was like manifesting into full panic. And so like, and that's literally what happens to Jesse, you know, like, it's just
being straight will kill you.
Being straight will kill you. Okay.
Louis' straight version of the substance was coming out of him.
I was about to say.
It was 7 days, and he started bleeding from his nose. Yeah.
So yeah, I just think there's a lot here for any queer person to like kind of get into, and it's even though the ending is like such a fucking flop. Like, if you just like don't think about that and don't think about how Freddy ends up making out with her in the end, like. It's a very nice little queer fairy tale. I mean, it's truly shocking, just like the overtness, you know, asses in locker rooms and like BDSM, like the amount of BDSM homosexuals that were born out of this, like from watching this movie, crazy. Like, why are they at a gay club? Like, why is the coach at the like? It's just. It's not even just like this one person going through the thing. There's so many, like the fucking bullies.
Al Pacino's in there and leather in the background.
Friedkin doing totally straight stuff as well too.
Exactly.
No one knows why he's there, but he's just being very straight. So you're basically saying Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is to leather gaze what Robin Hood, the Disney movie, is to furries. Is that what you're
100%? It's just jarring though. I mean, like, people keep talking about like the subtext. I'm like, where's the subtext?
It's
babe?
all
like,
fucking text.
Yeah,
it's all
just
text.
It's just I mean, and I know people want to like tap dance around the thing, but it's like, no, it's just like very aggressively gay. Like, you know, why is he in his underwear? Like, what for? Why the dancing, the whole, all of it. It's just, I mean, and God bless, he even has the girlfriend who like doesn't know what the fuck's going on.
Right.
Like, I mean, we my girlfriend in high school, she was like, what's happening? I was like, I don't know, like, what, you know, had no idea. It's just, I think it's very radical, very transgressive, and you know, I think the gags are like really, and the gore of it all is just kind of silly, so it's it doesn't feel like, it's more gross out stuff, I guess. But like, when you are like, sex is gross, like that's kind of the whole thing, right? Like, and so I quite like the movie, but like, as someone who is like, this is not my shit, so I understand why if this is your shit, you're like, what the fuck. Yeah, I don't know. I also love, I didn't even realize, I was like, oh, having a male lead is like weird. I didn't realize that was the thing, but I guess it is.
For a nightmare movie, yeah, it's the only one. I will say that like the gay aspect of it is what I like about it. It's more so when it has to be a nightmare movie that I'm just like, oh, well, I don't like this part as much, but everything else that it's, you know, doing all that is very great.
I guess like you're right though. I mean, like, if you think too hard about like, I mean, Freddy's whole fucking deal is like to be in dreams. I was like, why does he want to come to like take over and be like a human or whatever.
It doesn't
Once
make
it comes up
any
on New
sense.
Line releases, that's what he wants to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm not one of those that like everything has to have an explanation, but like, what are his powers in the real world? Because they seem very no
Loosey-goosey,
definition.
baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I can boil a pool, but only for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I can.
I'll make it mildly discomforting.
I was
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking like, are people going to be like fully boiled? Like, is that what's going to be happening? And it's like, no, they don't do that.
Yeah,
And they should have.
You nearly expect them to pull lobsters out of it and just be like, get free food, like everybody. Yeah. I will also say, I love how even in the documentary, the ending where the screenwriter, who's a piece of shit, says like, yeah, you know, the power of true love with a woman can save you. I'm like, well, you might have written it that way, but even if you want to write it, and even though this is a cliche horror ending that just had to end that way, technically you could argue it doesn't work. Like, technically.
Right. Because there's like a twist. There's the Freddy Krueger arm ending.
Yeah, I mean, that's how all of these things end, but if you want to read it that way and just be like, well, fuck you, it's right there. I can read it this way. It didn't work. So
It's funny. I guess a lot of the Lisa involvement at the end was actually Wes Craven being like, when he turned down the movie, he's like, by the way, the script sucks. And was like, you need to like, he was like, you need to beef up Lisa because she's just not a character. And so that was the idea, was to give her the ending. And for all the talk of Jessie being a scream queen, like if you look at the theory, if you look at like Men, Women, and Chainsaws, like where the scream queen stuff comes from, she still ends up being the final girl. She like is the one who like comes to the rescue at the end. She's the one who like adopts the phallus. She stabs him several times. And then in like a very fairy tale type thing, she becomes the Prince Charming who literally kisses Freddy to wake, up Jessie inside. And so like, I agree. Like, I understand that it's all like, oh, he's the final girl, but he's like 70% final girl, and that other 30% is an actual final girl.
yeah.
I will say that one of my favorite parts is whenever Jesse goes to the S&M club and he was like, wait a minute, something's off with this place.
Did you see a bunch of deleted scenes where he also went up a couple other nights as well?
Well, yeah.
I also like that it implies that the gym teacher is there every night. Like, you
Yeah.
nearly expect him to show up hungover in one scene and be like, don't talk to me. like just run around.
Well, no, he gets to the S&M club and he's like, wait a minute, something's wrong about this place. This S&M club doesn't have a fire exit.
Fire exit.
Very good.
What was
Very
his
good.
problem? Yeah.
Yeah.
What was his problem? Oh, The Simpsons. Everything comes back to The Simpsons.
Oh,
Especially on here. Charlie, I know that you had not watched this in a while, so I want to hear what your takes were.
Yeah, I saw this, I think I watched it a summer when I was in high school, and it is that very interesting thing where A, I was in the closet, and B, I feel like it's always interesting when a movie like this has a cultural revival, and then you think back on like when you watched it and how hated it was. Like, I'm pretty sure when I watched this, it was like the mid-aughts. It had like anywhere from like a 12 to a 20-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, and everyone thought it was a total embarrassment. And of course, I saw the gayness, but was in the closet myself and didn't want to identify with it in any way. But it is a movie where I'd only seen it once, and I remembered basically everything about this movie and enjoyed it so much more this time around because I was I'm much more secure in my sexuality now, and I also just had much more of an interest in queer theory, of course, and we've covered a lot of it. I mean, it's not subtle, but I don't think being subtle is a problem, or the lack of subtlety isn't the problem. It is sort of, I mean, we talked about how the first Nightmare on Elm Street, one of the strengths of that movie is that even if nothing makes sense, that's part of its strength, because you don't know really what reality is, even when they think they're in reality. And here, it doesn't really make sense at all. And like everybody has said, I don't need everything to be explained. I don't really give a shit about what the mythos is, but at the same time, it doesn't make any sense why Freddy would like this. You just read it as queer allegory, and as queer allegory, I find it really fascinating. And I mean, it reminded me of the first time when I watched Showgirls and thought it was terrible back when the cultural reappraisal didn't happen. And then you watch it again and you're like, oh, wait a minute, there's shit here. And obviously Showgirls is a much more ingenious and movie than this, in my opinion. But it is that kind of thing where you look back on how history has treated its star, much like Elizabeth Berkley in Showgirls, now Mark Patton, and seeing this reemergence of everyone coming together and saying, no, I saw so much of myself in this character or in this performance, and we were terrible to you as a society, and you were so sorry we put you through that, to kind of come back. There are movies that, like, you know, work like, have sort of this time machine quality where, like, you come back and you look at something after after it's been reassessed, and I found it, like, you know, very entertaining and very fascinating and very rich. And, you know, is there like, I mean, is there like a lot beneath the allegory? Not really, but the fact that it exists is kind of a miracle in and of itself. And I kind of was amazed by just how I remembered so much of this. And to go into what you were saying, Louis, about the horror, I kind of forgot just how sparse the gore is, but when it happens, it's so freaky. I mean, even the first time I watched it, even when I was like, when I claimed, you know, that it was bad, that scene that we've talked about of Freddy, you know, completely, you know, slicing himself out of his stomach, like, it has a brutal power to it that anyone who, I agree with what everyone said here, anyone who has been queer or has been in the closet and it has been filled with complete, you know, internalized shame, like, can identify with the power of those images. And yeah, I mean, stating a lot of obvious here, I know that this is a basic take at this point, but I found it much more enlightening this time around. And I also think it's probably, I've weirdly not seen all of, I've seen like half of 4 and haven't seen 5, but I'd say this is probably my second or third favorite Nightmare movie. The first one is probably my favorite. It's also been a minute since I've seen New Nightmare, which we're going to get to. But yeah, it felt really nice to kind of watch this after having last seen it in such a place that I could have identified with Jesse and didn't, or chose not to. And now to come back and to just see and to know everything about what happened with Mark Patton, and to see, you know, identify what makes this movie such a queer classic and see what a great performance he gives. It felt much more special this time around.
Yeah, I can't even like imagine like thinking about, so Mark Patton is closeted, is, you know, going through hell with his partner who has contracted HIV, and like is performing this specifically, right? Like, and there's something inside himself, he doesn't want to be this way. Like, it's this very lived in performance. And what you said is like absolutely true. Like, it's a miracle that this exists. It's a miracle that we have like this time capsule of like this feeling of gay shame in like the 80s. Like, you know, there's just there are not a lot of places where people are finding this, and there's that's the reason why I think people, you know, still to this day find it and are like, holy shit, like it's crazy that this exists. And I think that's why people continue to be attracted to it. Yeah,
I guess in 2016 Mark Patton did tell BuzzFeed that he did feel like the and that's after the Scream Queens came out, because that was 2015. So in 2016, he told BuzzFeed that he did feel betrayed by the filmmakers because they were aware that he was gay and closeted, and he felt that they had considerable leverage over him to perform in that role as a gay teen. So like, I kind of wonder if after the documentary he's sort of like bent back the other direction of being like, actually, no, what you did was wrong, and I am actually still mad.
It's like Robert Englund, like, who was clearly like so into the thing and like being like, fuck yeah, this is like the horror and terrors of all these things, and like he wanted to push that envelope, but like Robert Englund had nothing to lose. Like, he's a straight man, like, you know. So being able to perform that as like this, I don't know, like acting thing, there's no risk for him, you know. There's no risk in performing like edgy gay art when you're a straight man. When you're closeted, it's like okay, well, cool. I love gay edgy art, but like I don't want to like be fucking harassed the rest of my life, and I want to like work still. So yeah, it was just I would understand if Mark Patton felt that way because yeah, at the end of the day, like he was the lead and everyone was like, well, of course you cast this gay guy, and like now everyone hates the movie. And like with the whole part of the documentary where they're like, and here are all the trolls who are online saying like this is the worst fucking movie ever.
Yeah,
and
it really not to go back to the documentary, but there is one thing. I mean, I was thinking about like there is a moment in the documentary where it takes screen caps of all the Rotten Tomatoes reviews and the IMDb ratings, and a part of me just felt so ashamed where I was just like, I'm sure I took some of that in the first time I watched this movie, and like even though it was like 20 years later, like I'm sure like even that's insane that like that was just the type of cultural criticism that we were like used to even like 15-20 years ago. Like I don't, and I was, you know, a teenager when I last saw this who didn't know who I was very much anxious and, you know, not confident in my own skin, and probably took all that shit in. And it's kind of crazy how it's also wonderful that this thing is reclaimed, from flaws and all, warts and all. The fact that a lot of people came together in the queer community to be like, no, this should be celebrated for this camp classic that it is, type of thing. I mean, it took how long? What is it, like 30 something years at this point? Like I don't know. Like when would you say this? I guess that's another question. When was this first reclaimed? Or like I'm sure there were. Well,
I mean, I think like the gays have always known.
Yeah,
I think
course.
Like. And so like when Peaches Christ is like talking about, I mean, so and frankly, I don't know, like, are there film critics out there who are not vibing with like the gay stuff and are like, this is just like still a bad movie? I'm sure that still exists as well. But I think there's probably a lot of people like me though, who would never watch this anyway. And their friends are like, no, actually, like you should watch this scary movie because it's actually really gay and cool.
It's funny. I do think, and maybe this is like a full galaxy brain idea, I don't think enough credit is given to USA Up All Night, which is something that I was going to say, I feel like if anybody knows about it, it's Kevin, but I feel like you might even be too young for it, Kevin. But USA Up All Night was, you know, this Friday night, Saturday night show that USA used to do. It'd be like midnight, and it was sometimes hosted by Gilbert Gottfried and sometimes hosted by, I can't think of her name, all of a sudden I love her. She would famously do the USA Up All Night. And they would show the Freddy movies, which is how I initially saw, even pre like DVD, Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And so I do think like the reappraisal probably started with the midnight audience actually pretty quickly, but it took a while to trickle out into a more mainstream. I mean, as with all cult status stuff, to trickle out into like a more mainstream thing. So yeah, you probably couldn't have gotten the documentary Scream Queen made 20 years ago, but like 10 years ago, that's when, you know, the internet culture and everything is ramping up. And so like that's, but I would bet I would put good money on that it probably started quite a while ago.
The just because I was not familiar with this is before my time, but I looked up USA Up All Night. Gilbert Gottfried was host from 1989 to 1998, and then
Rhonda Shear.
Yep, from 91 to 98. There was also someone named Carolyn Schlitt who only hosted for 1 year, 1989 to 1990.
We don't talk about the Schlitt years. No. That piece of Schlitt. We don't.
Oh. Well,
not
also,
in this house.
Also, the queer community is mainly responsible for these types of like I mean, if you look at this, if you look at Showgirls,
is that what you're gonna say?
Yes,
for art?
Yes. I started a new sentence before finishing my first one, so yes, that's what I meant. But yeah, I mean, you look at Showgirls, you look at this, you look at, you know, even Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is always, I mean, it was always, you know, that thing. But like, it's that type of, it becomes that midnight movie. Also, the weird part of me is like doing Da Vinci Code shit where I was like, Rocky Horror Picture Show is 1975, Freddy's Revenge is 1985, Showgirls is 1995. I'm just like, I'm doing
what
that.
was in 05?
Yeah.
I need to know.
And the X and the E and the S backwards, they're Greek letters. They go up to 666. That's
Gavin,
just for
please. Gavin,
Brokeback
please.
Mountain came out in 2005, and that's when just a bunch of skywriters just came out with like gays win, just like yeah, I don't know.
Oh my god, I love Freddy Krueger in Brokeback Mountain. Underrated performance.
I wish I knew how to kill you, Bryden.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Bryden, had you seen this prior? I don't think you have.
I hadn't. Just a thought too with like the new line of it all. When like you get the scene in this where it's like saying like, oh, this diary belongs to someone named Nancy. I don't know, before my time and everything. And it reminded me of how the Final Destination movies, which New Line also put out years later, will be saying like, this accident that we had seems very similar to one that happened just a few years ago. And then there's like a 5-minute scene where it's like, all right, we need to look up all these articles about previous freak accidents that have happened. And also those movies similarly have a twist where it's like, whew, in the clear, everything's fine. And then something horrible happens and then it cuts to credits.
Don't they also say that, I'm sorry for interrupting, but don't they say that like his Nancy's mom killed herself?
I think they do say that. That's right, yeah.
Which I was like, what? I was like, maybe...
Well, how do you explain what happens to her in the first movie? Well, it's like, well, Freddy jumped on her and then she just kind of descended into her bed into a vast of nothingness. Be like, or you could just say she killed herself.
Or got pulled through a tiny window. You know?
She did get pulled through a tiny window. And then I don't know, and then they saw the aftermath and they went, oh, she drank herself to death or something. Right. I don't know.
I mean, she should have went to that meeting.
Yeah. She should have gone back on tour in Nashville is what she should have done. But
wasn't she just slowly killing herself anyway?
Yeah.
Come on.
One of my favorite, I think we talk about this, but one of the best parts of the first one that's underappreciated is locked.
Her final line is my favorite line in the first movie when she's like, they say when you can't remember the night before you've bottomed out, and she says it so chipper that you're just like, what? That is not a thing that people say,
especially in that tone.
You seem pretty happy about this. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that was just like a little observation I had that was just funny. And I think it also is just a sign of like a year into doing this podcast. I'm just thinking like New Line connections. Like my brain's just like getting galaxy brain. Yeah, I like this pretty well. I think this isn't like, it's got like some thorny, like I think like the thorny themes of it or like, and how the sort of self-loathing of like the Jesse character, like that, how it manifests, like where it's like he's lashing out against himself and people that he maybe feels attracted to and people that like he feels like he's supposed to be attracted to, like the way that it manifests, like where he's, you know, killing his friend Robert Rusler, and also like it's like he has to stop Freddy from like coming out of his mouth when he's making out with Lisa, where he's like sort of rejecting the. It's interesting how it is.
I like how that's how you describe it. Not that Freddy Krueger's tongue just emerges from his mouth. That Freddy Krueger's like trying to crawl out, like
which then Jack Shoulder does later in The Hidden, where like the sort of slug alien keeps like, you know, slithering into people's mouths and everything to transition. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that movie. I do love The Hidden still, but anyways,
I was gonna say canonically long tongue. Remember when he stuck it through a phone in the first movie?
Right, of course. Yeah. I do think this is like not as narratively tight as like the first, like I think the first movie is like does have like a really like good focus on like who its main character is, and also just like how it moves through its plot and everything, where it is sort of like, you know, the four friends like who like get like sort of picked off one by one, and then you're left with following Heather Langenkamp, although you are following her throughout the whole movie, but she is like the one who like is going to prevail through all of this, whereas in this, like we were talking about, I think I feel like Patton does sort of get lost in the mix of things in like the last like third of the movie, when like once Freddy does take over. I do really like Englund's performance, where he's Freddy and also occasionally Jesse is like coming through and everything, like when like, you know, Lisa is like confronting him and saying like, Jesse, I know you're still in there, and you see like, you know, Englund's eyes like dart from side to side and everything, and like, you know, seeing Jesse like, you know, sort of trying to break through. I think those are like, that's actually like really good acting on Englund's part, and I think the pathetic way where he sort of like slumps up like all like kind of fearful of Lisa like on the catwalk at the end, I think is like really skillful.
Did they give him contact lenses for those? Like,
no.
Those are not the typical Englund eyes, right?
He doesn't have
like,
red eyes?
There's like, No, but they're like big and like I don't know. They almost look
interesting.
like dog eyes. You know, like like he looks like he's fucking tripping on LSD. At sometimes his pupils are so big. Like I don't know. Like I kept thinking that whenever it cut back, I was like, those are different eyes. Like or they put contacts in him or something. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I think I'm also just like going off examples of like I feel like I've seen movies where this character is being taken over by some other being, and it's just like, all right, now I'm just like listening to someone with like a different voice. I'm like, not to like go with like denigrate performances that like where it's like this person's just like doing run of the mill possessed stuff, but I was just like, oh, that's it. Like I just found it interesting, especially like because Kruger is like doing like just a little bit. He's a little bit different than he is in the first movie, which I liked. Yeah, no, I'm fine with like. It is interesting how you talk about how Lisa does sort of have the final girl role, and I think Kim Meyer is like I think she's totally solid in the movie. I think like her care for Jesse is like evident throughout the movie. I think like she's very straightforward in that regard. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like one of those things where it's like she's not like I think both she and Jesse are not like especially like three-dimensional characters and everything like that. Like we said, like aside from like the themes that we've been talking about like with the whole movie that Jesse's dealing with with his like sexuality, there's not like a whole lot like to like what are his interests as a teen and everything, like but besides like as just a kid and everything. I mean, the movie does start where like bad shit's already happening to him, which I like sort of on an economical storytelling level. But yeah, he and Lisa, they're just sort of like I don't know, they're like two nice teens and they like each other and like okay, sure, that's fine. But once the movie like sort of
Lisa's rich.
Yes,
Lisa is
that's
rich.
true.
That's a character trait. By the way, just side note. Holy shit, that lawn looks so green. I miss the way movies just looked like. I was just like, oh my god, color. Like, they're in a backyard and this looks amazing. Like, anyway, sorry.
No,
I've been interrupted again.
It's totally fine. Like, it's one of those movies where, like, for everything where I'm like, I wish, like, it went, like, a little bit wilder, sort of, in some of the stuff. Like, I mean, like, if the pool's like heating up, it's like why are people not being like boiled and everything, like with the hot pool and everything. But then there's like the really nasty bit where like someone like tries to climb over the gate and the gate catches on fire and then they fall into a pit of fire and everything. I'm just like I did like sort of the nastiness of some of the kills in that, and there is like some nasty inventiveness. And like, I feel like Ebert was always, critical of movies where it's like, wow, this place takes place in some industrial factory with, like, faulty catwalks and steam billowing from all over the place. And I'm like, yeah, this is kind of that movie, but it's lit really well. Like, it got, like, all the layers of green and blue and red. And also that crazy, like, zoom out wide shot where, like, it's, like, her standing on the catwalk and it's just, like just an abyss, like, below it and everything. Like, I think that's, like, a really cool reveal, like, through the filmmaking. Sorry, Charlie, you were going to say something.
No. What I would give to have those types of, like, matte paintings and those types of settings again in movies. When is the last time we've gotten any kind of, like, actually good-looking industrial factory?
Good point. I'd have to think about
in
that.
a horror movie again. Like, yeah, anyway.
No, I like all the stuff that everyone's saying. Yeah, I think this is totally solid. Just not... I feel like... And yeah, I think Gavin or Olivia, it might have been you who was talking about like how it does take a while for the movie to sort of kick into sort of overdrive where it's like Jesse, like sort of like what Jesse's like going through where like people start getting killed off. It doesn't really happen until much later in the movie, but I still think Shoulder's like good enough at like the quite good, rather, at like the sort of off-kilter nature. I mean, not just like the dream sequences where like like the furnace is on and like you get that like POV shot moving through like the house and everything as like he marches into like the sister's bedroom, but also like just weird stuff like the scene that doesn't really get explained with like how the snake ends up on Jesse's shoulder when he falls asleep in science class. Like that's like I was thinking, oh, is this like a sort of waking nightmare and everything? But it's like, no, the snake just somehow just got out and like is on his shoulder and everything. But it's just like, oh, something's just kind of like off already. And I maybe the movie could have gone further with that, but I like that scene's in there all the same.
I do hate that the teacher blames him, though.
It's really
I've always never understood that. Where he's like, if you want to play with animals, join the circus.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, stock characters from England. Like,
yeah. I also love in the 80s movies where they just like pull out an organ and slap it on the table. Like if you did that now, there would be
no gloves, no nothing, just right on a desk.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but like the special effects I think are quite good. Charlie, like you mentioned, like the whole scene of like Freddy bursting out of Jesse's body. I mean, I love the detail, like not just like sort of how it looks like his skin is breaking open, but also like that there's like a little bit of like yellow like pus almost on like that you can see on the arm. And I'm like, oh, that's just like such a like a little like just a little detail that like is like makes it feel just like an extra bit grosser and a little bit more real. So I don't know. I think there's a lot to like in this. I'm curious to see like how the other sequel. I mean, it's interesting coming to this franchise where like I've only seen like before this I'd only seen the first movie and Freddy vs. Jason. So like I'm curious to see like how different directors take on this series, because we've got Chuck Russell, Rennie Harlan, and Stephen Hopkins, I think, who are doing that in X3, and I've enjoyed works of theirs before, so I'm curious to see what they bring to the table with this. Yeah.
It is good that you've seen the two gay ones, according to Kelly Rowland.
My goodness. Freddy vs. Jason is a movie I wish I would have saw in a theater. That would have been so much fun.
I did see it in the theater. Fuck yeah. It was a good time. Wow. It was a great time.
That's a fine movie. It's fun to watch.
It has its moments.
Yeah. Preferably ones without Kelly Rowland in it.
No, I mean when she calls, she says it's a Christmas sweater, she pulls out the F slur. Honestly, gay icon right there.
I also just have to say, I work as someone who does outreach work, and I met with someone that I support today who was literally wearing Freddy Krueger clothes, and it was my last appointment, and I like it was the same type of red black like design, and I was just like, is this really happening? Like, I was just like,
are you sure that wasn't an odd half an hour where you fell asleep, Charlie?
Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. But anyway.
Did we get to everybody? Gavin, did you have anything else to say?
I don't have too much else to say. I do really, for all of the things I'm saying about Jack Shoulder, I do actually really like this movie. I think it is a good time. I do think Jack Shoulder's direction pales in comparison to someone like Wes Craven. And, I just don't think he has the visual acuity that Wes Craven truly does. And so a lot of the scenes are like literally just framed badly. Yeah, I don't know, because we kind of hit all the major points. I do think, once again, everybody made a movie where Jesse says he's inside me and he wants to take me again, and they're all like, "What, gay?" and clutching their pearls. Like, I don't know, but it is a good time. I think Mark Patton is actually quite good in it for what he's given. I can't imagine being on this set. I can't imagine what was going through his head, what was going through the other actors' heads. Clearly not much was going through the production staff's heads.
Well, especially like if no one on set was like, I mean, I guess that makeup artist was like, oh, wait, that's too gay. But everything else, no one heard the lines he was reading, and they were like, chill, cool. In the documentary, they're like, I didn't know that was a gay bar. It's like, girl, that is literally LA's largest gay bar, and you went to scout it and said, yep, that's the one.
Yep. The documentary does kind of skim over the fact that Clu Gallagher gave Mark Patton a big hug at the reunion. He plays the father. I do think it's kind of funny that this kid is all over the place and leaving the house in the middle of the night, and he constantly thinks his kid is on heroin, I guess.
Right.
This guy does not understand how drugs work. But it is interesting too, just seeing that hug. I guess not to go back to the documentary, but I was like, oh, it seems like he's very supportive of him. What was going through his head? Because he has a lot of scenes where they butt heads, especially in the beginning of the movie.
It also just doesn't make sense. I mean, for what was happening at that time, we were in the middle of the AIDS crisis, and you're just gonna tell me we're talking about gay anxiety and shame for no reason?
Right.
That's just
and then to make the matters worse, of the writer literally being and this comes from another interview that's not part of but being that homophobia. He said he wanted to, I guess he's tried to straighten out the idea that it was a joke about the homophobia thing, because he said he wanted to tap into the fears of an audience of 14-year-old boys. Well, listen, that's not the fear. That's not right.
You were tapping. But...
Yeah. and that's something only a bigoted straight person could come up with and be like, oh, the worst thing that could happen to me is if I realized I was gay. And so yeah, I don't know, there's lots of mixed things, but I understand the appraisal of this movie. I think it deserves its cult classic status, and I do like it, but the more I watch, this is certainly I hate to say it, for me, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has started to become diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And that's sort of unfortunate, because I do really remember being like, hey, this movie's so much fun. But like, there's so much baggage now. And then to like really think of the cultural things that were going on at the time, that's just like, come on, guys. But yeah, but if you can shut that part of your brain off, like, absolutely. Like him at the party sequence, fucking great. The bit that they stole from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where the dogs have the baby faces.
That's such a cool bit. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I
have the Freddy action figure actually right here. I can't, but it comes with the fucking dogs from part 2. Like, yeah, there's some good stuff in it. It's just sort of unfortunate that like there's like some thorny stuff surrounding it that's really unfortunate. So it's one of those things where like you can either sort of choose to embrace the radical queerness of it, or you can be like, hey, no, it's this thing we're gonna lie about for almost 40 years.
And it's also crazy considering you look at the first movie and it is so clearly about Reagan era, like suburbia equals safety type of like it's exposing the falsehoods and the lies of suburbia so purposefully. And then this one,
literally when she comes back home and there's bars on every fucking window, like, absolutely, yeah, it's very much about that.
So to have to go from that to this one where a bunch of people were like, we didn't know what we were doing, it is kind of insane how much of a reversal that is for the people behind the camera and what they were commenting on, especially considering AIDS was on the rise when this one came out. Another huge one of arguably Reagan's biggest failing. I mean, it's one of the biggest failings in our fucking Jesus. So,
and we're still feeling it. But
the
and not to like plug the mixed reviews again, but we talked about this in our Pam Grier episode about like exploitation cinema. One of the things that exploitation cinema could do, because it knew it was never playing to a mainstream audience, was talk about issues that weren't going to be allowed to be spoken of other than in like hushed whispers in a public setting. And that's, New Line, when it's starting out, it's starting as this sort of upstart that's doing a lot of John Waters stuff. It's doing a lot of horror movies. And those things are good for discussing things that maybe don't get into the mainstream. Like, Disney's not making movies about fucking AIDS at this point. And yeah, admittedly, like, this movie isn't like it's not like overtly about that, but it does have hallmarks and whatnot talking about the homosexuality. And so like that's the good thing about horror, is that it does allow you to be subversive. It does allow you to reach an audience that you wouldn't maybe get to reach otherwise, because it's a very self-selecting audience. And listen, like, I know there's a dark side to horror as well, and I know there's certainly people who watch it for the wrong reasons, but I do think, like, especially in the 80s when it's becoming such a big thing, it is specifically because it has a point of view and it's willing to go to places that other movies are not, and it's going to find that audience by doing that. We talk about this all the time in the mixed reviews, that it's not, things that are made for everyone are usually horrible. It's about specificity, because then you have to bring yourself to it. You have to do sort of the translation on your own, and make it so, either you want to know more or it didn't work for you. And if it's just general for everyone, for the general populace, then it doesn't have a point of view and it's not interesting.
Amen to that. Holy shit.
I mean, I was going to say that, but then Gavin said it first. But yeah, that's fine. No, that's great points.
Anyways, dick and fart jokes.
Anything else we have to say about Nightmare on Elm Street 2? Louis, are you going to watch the rest of the series, or?
Absolutely not. Are you fucking crazy? I will say, I was Charlie. You mentioned like the green grass, and it kind of like triggered something in my head of like, this does kind of have like this Pee Wee Herman vibe going on. Like, there's like the antics of it all, and the color story of it all, the silliness of it all. One's about like ninja warriors in your dreams or something. Is that the next one?
Ninja Warriors.
If only.
That's
Ninja
actually
Warriors.
the full title.
This is the full title.
Dream Warriors. It's all
Dream
about,
Warriors.
instead of, it's Heather Langenkamp comes back, but they're all like in an emotional support group of all people that are dealing with Freddy stuff, and they all try to combine and...
They're in an asylum. That's very nice of you to be like they're in an emotional support group. They've rounded the children of Springwood up and they've put them in an asylum, Louis.
Well, aren't all asylums just emotional support groups?
Oh dear.
Louis says he's not going to watch the rest of these. He's coming over next week.
You watched
the next one.
Yeah, Kevin watched Sucker Punch and was just like, I love movies about emotional support.
I did not
groups."
watch Sucker Punch. Don't you put that evil on me.
I like that that's what you object to. You're like, actually, the test says that was a lie.
Yeah, no, never. Be like, oh, he did watch Sucker Punch a lot of times. No, 0 times I've watched Sucker Punch.
I don't foresee them in my future, but I have heard that one specifically is fun because it's like Power Rangers and the bad guy is Freddy Krueger, and that seems cool. Yeah, just like I'm not watching scary movies on purpose. Like that's just not my thing.
That's just something Gavin makes him do.
Right. And that is correct. That's the star vibe. Different strokes for different folks. All good. Not a big deal. I'm not mad about it. And listen, like, I think that's kind of like the fun of our podcast, though. Like, we push each other to see things that we wouldn't have or discover new things. And like, and I say this like, oh, I don't like scary movies, but like one of my favorite episodes is literally about zombie movies that
Hell
I
yeah.
really took a shine to. I was like, oh, fuck, like there's actually a lot of good stuff here. And I think that's kind of the lesson of this movie as well. Like, even though it's like not the most, it's not like a brilliant cinema, but like it's a miracle it exists. I'm glad it exists. And, are there more gay horror movies? Do we know, like, off the top of our heads?
I did want to, like, and not to be, it is your podcast. So, but when Kevin earlier you said this is one of the first gay horror movies, this is not one of the first gay horror movies.
This is one of the first
mainstream,
yes.
exactly. And the wording is important because there's so many gay horror movies that have existed throughout the years, but they don't get the mainstream attention because, as I was saying, like about exploitation films, it either has to be all subtext or it's just completely made for a very small audience. Like a lot of people aren't running out to see like Daughters of Darkness or whatnot, which is a lesbian vampire movie from the 70s, or all of the shit that's in Dracula's Daughter from the 30s. Yeah. Like that's a very lesbianic movie, but it's all subtext because that's the only way you can do it. And I'm not trying to I know that's what you meant, Kevin. But I think the wording of mainstream gay horror movie is important.
That's
right.
No, it's good to be aware of that context. I want to jump on to your point about how Gavin, I think you were talking about how like it's important to have like sort of I think like the specificity of like I think not only people who are making horror but also like discussing it too, like because the thing that like often happens, I mean I'm thinking of movies that even like I guess like you could call them like queer horror and like and like that they are subtext and everything. Like I've heard people like talk about like The Hitcher from the 80s like as being like like having like a lot of queer subtext to it, and which is like totally true. Or a movie like, I mean this is a subtext is dealing with like the gay scene, but like cruising and everything. And like if you read reviews from like mainstream critics at the time, not everyone like divulges their identity and everything, but sometimes like you do like get like people who are like saying like, oh, I don't get it and everything. And it's like that sort of inability or maybe even unwillingness to like sort of like delve deep into like what a movie's meanings is. Like I think like the sort of like creating that space for discussion and diversity of voices and talking about the movies as well, that's also like very key. I'm sorry if like maybe I just missed you making that point, but I just think that's an interesting thing to factor into this, especially talking about like people who reclaim this movie that we talked about.
Yeah. I don't think it's a point that can be made enough. So honestly, I don't. Like you're right. And I agree with everything you were saying. I do have a very important question to ask. Now that Louis and I have both accused you of homophobia, Kevin, are we never invited back again?
This is just
so sorry.
This is just a daily thing.
I'll sneak you through the back door.
Hey now.
That's the only way we do it.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.
Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
Thank you for listening. To hear more shows from the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, please select the link in the description